What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are, another discussion, obviously speaking on a day where we had a really big Superclasico and a big result for one of the teams that we thought was going to win. We'll dissect into how it all went there. We'll also talk about new call-ups for the Paraguay national team as they will take on Mexico in Atlanta on the 31st of August, and a lot of other things going on. But unfortunately, we kind of do have to start on a sad note because we are talking literally just hours, about 48 hours since the passing of the ex-footballer Hugo Lusardi. For those that don't know him, he was a player that played for various clubs, otherwise known as Libertad, Olimpia, Sportivo Luqueño, was a part of the national squad that actually made it to the final of the 2014 Copa Libertadores. He actually gave the assist to Santa Cruz for that game in the first leg against San Lorenzo. So obviously a big loss, died of cancer at the age of 39, just days before he was about to turn 40. So, Fede, I know I didn't want to start on a sad note here, but, certainly this is big news for us in that follow Paraguayan football, that know about, no one likes to really talk about premature deaths. And, unfortunately, we have to speak about one in Lusardi, who, from what I've been seeing, from what people have been talking about, he was just a wonderful player, but also a wonderful character as well.
Yeah, he was 40 years old, almost 40 years old, and so young, so much life ahead of him. I mean, he barely had football left in him, I think, because of his age. He was probably on one of his last clubs, but yeah, we saw the best of him a couple of years ago, especially with that Nacional, Libertad. I remember also seeing a great Lusardi winning several championships with that club, and a lot of fans remembering many of those important and awesome goals that he made, especially from outside of the box. He had a really nice shot and a powerful shot, and yeah, a lot of people remember him. A lot of people knew who he was, and unfortunately the cancer took him. But hey, here we are, Roberto, with another Guarani Vision episode, and it's awesome to be back, especially after hitting my prediction, I would say, of the Superclasico. I think all three of us were pretty much on it. I mean, Cerro Porteño
for once
didn't do anything. I think that was the big surprise in the Superclasico, just to see one team pretty much up to the challenge, and to see Cerro Porteño pretty much do nothing with it. Another Clásico for Julio Cáceres, also the coach, and you look at what each team has done this year, and way more Clásicos for Olimpia than Cerro Porteño in a year where they played several times each other. Roque Santa Cruz also, I think, was one of the highlights this past weekend. He just turned 41, Roberto. I don't know. You got to look this up. I don't know if you're going to find that many 41-year-old players around the world that are scoring as many goals as he scored this season, as many goals as he scored in 2022. I think he's gone over 20 now, over 10. I think he has 13 this year. So, hey, that's a pretty good number for somebody that's playing constantly and that's keeping also his team up there on the league, fighting against the Cerro Porteño side that lost very important points against Olimpia. Julio Ciso also scored his first goal in Europe with the Brighton jersey, so I'm happy for him. And obviously seeing a lot of things coming to an end. We're in August, but we got the World Cup coming our way, so the calendar is pretty tight, and the other leagues will eventually come to an end. I'm talking about Intermedia, the second division, that's heating up, and the women's football also. We got the Libertadores coming up, so this Clausura, the local league, has to come to an end very soon, and we're probably going to have a champion in the next days. Olimpia has 2 games left. They have the best opportunity, I believe, to be champions as of right now. They were champions of the Apertura, but the fun thing, I believe, is to see pretty much 4 teams coming to these last couple of games with the opportunity to be champions. Not just Olimpia, Cerro Porteño up there also. They have the same points as of right now, but Cerro only has 1 game left. Olimpia has 2 games left. Libertad Limpeño also can be champions, but they just lost to Cerro Porteño, so they let go of a couple of points. And then you got Guarani also with the expectation with maybe getting their opportunity to get in there. but it would be a miracle if they get the championship. It does look like it could be for Olimpia, but hey, the women's football is also coming to an end, and it's going to be fun to watch these last couple of games for the women, especially heating up for the Libertadores, where Olimpia already has their ticket and where we have to know which is the other team that's going to play the Libertadores.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think obviously there's a lot to talk about here, and I'll get Ralph's chat and his kind of thoughts on all this because, for once we kind of get a prediction right, and we have a title race. I think that's really all we could really say from this because I think Olimpia came into this game confident. We looked at how Cerro Porteño was a side that kind of was not feeling as confident as they should be, and it was demonstrated in the 90 minutes in Paraguay. I mean, we'll get our discussion here. We'll start here because obviously Cerro went to Para Uno, obviously one of the teams that were still haven't lost a single game yet in the Clausura, only to then find themselves losing 2-0 at the Estadio Manuel Ferreira. Goals from Brian Montenegro, MVP, by the way, for Derlis Gonzalez, getting the assist on Montenegro's goal, and then following a back pass mistake from Alexis Duarte, Derlis Gonzalez scores the dagger to win the game. I mean, obviously, this was a game that had it all. We saw a lot of cards. We saw even a scuffle right at halftime between the players, where we saw Pachi Carrizo and Alejandro Silva sent off. But ultimately, I think we can really say here that Cerro Porteño were absolutely outclassed on the day, and Olimpia are deserved winners. So we definitely are very much in the midst of a title race. We have 4 teams, 5 if you want to put Guarani in there, 5 teams separated by 3 points that are still top, by the way, because Nacional have drawn over the weekend. And so obviously there is that level of expectation, but again, it's so tight right now for this Clausura title.
Yeah, it's there was a lot going on there. Hold on, where do we start? Let me pedal back. So the game itself, I mean, Olimpia against Cerro Porteño, it did kind of go the way we all predicted, that Olimpia won out. And I think it was a case of those goals coming at kind of the worst time for Cerro. We talked on the show and on last week about this. Cerro has a strong defense and Olimpia is good in attack. And within 8 minutes, Olimpia had scored. So suddenly that Cerro defense, they've been beaten, and then they're on the back foot because we know that Cerro are not scoring many goals at the moment. And I thought that was such a big decision very early on that Cáceres got right, because his big point was, who's he going to play with Derlis Gonzalez? He has Paiva scoring goals. He has Walter Gonzalez even scoring goals. And then he had Brian Montenegro, and he goes with Montenegro in the starting lineup, and 8 minutes into the game, he's put the ball away. And then we had a half, I think, that was playing out very frustrating for Cerro. They weren't creating much, as you guys were talking about. They were keeping possession, but they weren't doing anything with it. They weren't finding any kind of chances on goal. And the creative players were getting frustrated. And one of those creative players is Pachi Carrizo. And we saw tempers boiled over just on the halftime, and a brawl basically breaks out on the halfway line, and Pachi Carrizo had to go because he'd kind of thrown out an arm in reaction. And then maybe in a surprising kind of move, Ale Silva from Olimpia gets sent off, which we didn't see coming at first, but maybe with the VAR, the referee could have sent off, I don't know, about 3 or 4 players, to be honest, because there were some arms and things flying in. But in the end, he decided to even it up, as you sometimes see in these games when they're not sure what to do, the referee. So Ale Silva has to go, and it's 10 against 10. And then in the second half, what Chique Arce does is, okay, knowing that things aren't going very well, he makes his big kind of bet, comes on about 53 minutes, because he brings in Marcelo Moreno. He's already brought on Alfio Oviedo. And then he brings in Lucena in the middle to kind of get a bit more control. And you can see, okay, he's going to try and go for it here. He'll just shift things up. He's going to have 2 big kind of targets to throw balls to up front. But that all falls apart, because moments after the substitution is when Pulpito Duarte makes that mistake with the poor back pass. Derlis Gonzalez latches onto it, gets around Jean, no problem, makes it 2-0, and then it really is game over. So that timing of the first goal was difficult for Cerro, and then that second goal was a killer because it came just after they're trying to make the change and do something different. And yeah, I mean, it blows it open because we're not seeing any team really taking charge of the league at the moment. We have Olimpia doing something like this, which looks great, but they've already lost 2 games, right? They lost to Libertad, they lost to who am I forgetting who they lost to Tacuary, no? Yeah, to Tacuary. And then you have Libertad that had this really strange start, losing their games against Emiliano and General Caballero, but now they seem to be coming back into it. But no one's really like taking the league or taking control of the league like we saw in the Apertura. So that gives us this great race and some tough games coming up, especially for Cerro. I think Cerro in a really difficult period because they have Guarani this weekend, they have Libertad in 2 games. And even though they're top, it seems like they're almost on the precipice and they're not on very solid ground at the top of the league.
It was a win-win situation for Olimpia. Totally, they played at home. We said it last time that they were going to play at their home ground, and it was a chance for them to also get a lot of more people up to date with the opportunity to come to the stadium. And there was only 600 Cerro fans, so Cerro really felt like they were the away team in this situation, and Olimpia did very well lately at home, and they just did their thing. They didn't change pretty much what they were doing lately. I mean, they weren't attacking Cerro Porteño, doing it crazy. They were waiting on Cerro. They were giving them the ball, and they were counterattacking. They were throwing that long ball. Richard Ortiz had so many long passes. Marcos Gomez also. The defense, Cerro did not stop anything at all. They couldn't do their game, and they couldn't stop Olimpia, so it pretty much didn't go their way at all. Just as Ralph was saying, Olimpia scored early, and it just made Cerro Porteño nervous, and they just didn't know how to handle it. They just didn't know how to create football, just as it happened to them a week ago when they were playing against Nacional in front of their fans in Cerro Porteño Stadium, and that ended 0-0, and they didn't know how to do it. And they had one more player in that match, and same thing again. They were losing, and they needed to come back. They needed to show something, and the players pretty much didn't do anything. Chiqui Arce, I think, did try to change it up in the second half, but the players just aren't responding to him or to this moment. And it is kind of weird because you see that Cerro is up there on the table, but in these 2 games, it just has not felt like that the best team in the Paraguayan game. And especially from the individual players. I mean, Claudio Aquino has not been himself in these 2 games, and he's key. He's very important, just as Derlis Gonzalez is to Olimpia. I mean, Derlis Gonzalez is the best player in the Olimpia squad, and when he's healthy, when he's doing his thing, it makes it a lot easier for the rest of the guys, right? For Fernando Cardoso, for Ale Silva, for that midfield also, and he really took care of the job. He was the star of the game, and this all happened after something that we talked about on the last episode, the situation with his last club, the debt that Olimpia was having with his situation, and he got that off his shoulders, and then he had this big game, so it was a perfect week for him also with the fans and him coming back to the national team also. It was just a great week for Derlis Gonzalez, just a great player that I think is getting back to his best level, right? Back to his best shape. Cerro has way too many problems, Roberto. Maybe even in that locker room. I don't know if players are getting along that as they did back in the days. You were seeing the goalkeeper John always doing gestures against the defense. You were seeing defenders making mistakes like never before. I mean, Alexis Duarte. I mean, find me a couple of times that Alexis Duarte has given balls like that to the opponents. I mean, he usually doesn't make that mistakes. So it was kind of weird for even the good players that usually Cerro Porteño has they even made mistakes on a big game like this one. So I want to see how Cerro Porteño bounces from this, because now the pressure really is on Chiqui Arce. He's been here for almost for over a year now, and he needs to show that his team is growing. We always say this. He has a long contract, and if he's not building something, the board, the fans, they're going to be after him, and it's not going to be easy for him to handle that pressure.
No, absolutely not. And it's a good segue to what I wanted to speak about, because you're right. I think the pressure really is on Chiqui Arce. I mean, I'm pretty sure you saw fans calling for his vaccination back when they got eliminated from the Copa Paraguay. After this one, it just intensified a lot. And, we already spoke about how we don't think it's the right choice because of one, there's no one to replace him at this. That's better, that is, of course. And two, they're still in the league campaign. Yes, it's only by a few points, but yeah, this is a Cedro side that cannot afford to drop more points, because let's be real, guys. I mean, obviously, it's still a long season ahead, but you see other teams creeping up. I don't know. I feel like if Cerro Porteño happens to just drop more points and drop, I say lose. If they draw, maybe it's still out there, but they cannot lose any more games. And if they do, Ralph, I'll go to you on this one. I think they can kiss that Clausura title goodbye, and teams like Olimpia, Libertad, even Nacional are going to creep in now.
Yeah, it's a big weekend because they play Guarani, which is a team that's performing very badly at the moment, underperforming. But Cerro Guarani has always been, for a long time, has been quite a rivalry, because of, you can go back to like 10 years to when they took Fabro from Guarani champions and they took him to Cerro to become champions. There was games abandoned, I remember, like about 10 years ago. But then more recently, it's been because, of course, the way that Clausura finished last year with Cerro overcoming Guarani in those final minutes. So there's still a big rivalry there. Despite the fact Guarani aren't playing well, we can expect it to be quite a difficult game for them. And at the same time, we have this weekend Nacional Libertad. And so if Libertad overcome Nacional, and Libertad seem to be picking their way up again, then suddenly this Libertad is starting to look a bit more like the Apertura Libertad, which won the league quite comfortably. Well, comfortably, but pushed only by Cerro, right? But that's because Cerro got a record points total for a runner-up. But if we're not seeing that kind of performances now this time round, then Libertad could end up sneaking the league quite easily. So it's a big weekend. It just doesn't stop, right? The pressure's on. And just quickly about Chiqui Arce, he had a meeting this week, yesterday, I think it was, right, with his whole staff and with the directors. And of course, people were throwing out rumors about resignations or about firings, but it was nothing like that. It was just an analysis on what's been going on, what's been going wrong. But one thing Chiqui Arce pointed out, which is something to remind everybody, I guess, is they are still top of the league. And he said, well, we looked at the numbers and it's not really as bad as sometimes we paint that picture. If you take the perspective in terms of the points totals, because they got such a high points total in the Apertura, it's not like things are that bad, but there's just this kind of feeling that things are slowing down, I guess, a bit.
I think it's totally the pressure of the big teams, right? I mean, when Olimpia and Cerro Porteño are not champions in a year, it's weird, and the fans really make that. They make the coach feel the pressure, and I think they're on it on Chiqui Arce now. I mean, hey, it has not been easy for Cerro this season. They had, I could easily count 3-4 very ugly big losses in the year, that Libertad downfall, where they lost the tournament in the Apertura, the embarrassing game that they had the series they had against Palmeiras, not even having a chance. What happened in Copa Paraguay? I mean, there are several episodes, several big games this year. Now the Superclasico, for the fans to be after them, not just the players, but also the coach and the way that he's been handling this mini crisis, if you want to call it that way, or something, because they are still in the first place. They made more than 50 points in the Apertura. They were close to also taking the championship away from Libertad. But if they're not champions in this Clausura, Roberto, I don't know how they're going to maintain the project, and especially because I don't see the team evolving. I'm not seeing new faces. I'm not seeing new players, and Chiqui Arce is not hitting it with the names either. I mean, with the player elections that he made the other day, he didn't get the response he definitely wanted from his players. So when the players let you down, you also got to know that it's not just your job. Maybe the players aren't just responding to you either.
Yeah, and it's interesting to say that because I remember we were talking about how the Cedro side had a lot of depth, and it was good that they had a lot of depth. But the fact of the matter is that depth and those players aren't showing up. So you look at what's they're really going on and really how they can really evolve into becoming a better team and be able to compete. But we just didn't see that. And so I think that is where that kind of pressure goes in from a lot of these fans, because I think obviously the players that we expected them to be, the main stars are not stepping up. I think obviously one name that's kind of been very critical from a lot of them is Marcelo Martins Moreno, coming in as this like Clase A signing, basically a top class signing. And he really has, let's be real, guys, he's underwhelmed. I mean, there's no other word to say it.
There's no signing that was done this year that has really been up to the standards, Ralph, up until now. That's also a thing that I put on Chiqui Arce, because these are names that he asked for, and he's not getting what he expected.
Yeah, because it's the same. I mean, there's the Moreno Martins, but then Pachi Carrizo has come back. He didn't play in the Libertadores. Now he's his first big game of the season. He's sent off for like kind of a pointless challenge, very very similar to those that watch a Premier League. Like it's like a Darwin Nunez kind of situation. And then we have Brian Zamudio has scored 2 goals in one game where he's looked good, but otherwise hasn't looked very good. So yeah, none of these
he's
players
the only
really
one that has
convincing.
scored. He's the only one that has scored. Nobody else is scoring in Cerro.
Yeah. They're struggling with that. And the one thing we know that Chiqui Arce is really good at is developing players and forming players. But then now on the other side of his recruitment is not looking particularly good. And that's kind of like Fede says, that's really on him. I mean, he has to be finding the right players for this situation. And now it's too late, right? But they're not going to be able to sign anybody or bring somebody in. Now it's a case of what can I do with what I've got, and try to find a way out of this rut, because they've gone 3 games without scoring a goal, which I was looking up before the show. It's like May 2021 that they had a similar run like that, but that included Libertadores. We're just talking 3 domestic games they haven't scored in, which is really rare for them.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the other teams are going to take advantage of things. I think obviously for Olimpia's case, this is the best result that they can get. I mean, this is really something that, you could talk about how their elimination from the Copa Sudamericana was very premature, but getting the wins that they got so far and this win again in the Superclasico, that is going to restart their season. And if I'm an Olimpia fan, I would feel honestly confident that I could win this Clausura.
Yeah, especially with players coming back to their best shape. And even finding solutions in places where Olimpia was having problems, especially in defense. We saw Mateo Gamarra alongside Saul Salcedo, where, in some games we saw Mateo Gamarra play as a left back because Tito Torres was injured, because he couldn't play. We saw Tálvaro out for several games. We saw Antolín Alcaraz back there. Sometimes Luis Zárate, was very unstable back there. But now it looks like he got it under control. In these last 2 games, they didn't get scored on. So I think Olimpia, if they get that defense up to what they need, they're into it. They're into it for the long ride. And yeah, especially when you have Olimpia behind you, it does make a difference. They move a lot of people, and the pressure is going to be totally different. And just like I said before, if Derlis Gonzalez keeps up this level, I mean, just himself, he could take the tournament for Olimpia. He's scoring pretty much in every game, making the difference. And if he keeps shining, I think it's even going to be hard for Olimpia to keep this player after this year, just because of the level that he has. I mean, right now, I think it's just a privilege to have him here, just as Lorenzo Melgarejo, but Libertad has the money to keep Lorenzo Melgarejo. They have the money to have Roque Santa Cruz. Olimpia lost Roque Santa Cruz because they didn't have the money to keep him. He was a problem. And Libertad has Tacuara Cardoso. They have so many players that make so much money. They have big salaries, and Olimpia, they still have debts. They still have trouble. They still have problems. So yeah, they might have to sell a couple of players. But as of right now, they look like they got it together. And just when you need a response from the players after losing certain weird games, just as it happened against Tacuari. That response came, and again in big games. So as of right now, as of being in August, I would say Olimpia has had a much better year than Cerro Porteño, even though Cerro Porteño has made way more points in the year than Olimpia.
Yeah, it's a good point because of the situation, right? What the expectations were, and it's Olympia's, like we're talking about with the debts and with the problems, they're almost the opposite because they can't sign big players. All they've been doing is like pulling people back from loans and that kind of thing. And it's exciting the way Julio Cesar Cáceres got them. He gets them to play within their limitations, right? Because he has a lot of limitations and they don't play this really exciting, expansive football, but it's a very effective style of football, and he's built it up around partly Delis Gonzalez, but also Richard Ortiz. Like Richard Ortiz has become so important to the team, and when he's in the midfield, everything seems to just click and fit together, regardless of who's with him. So it's been sometimes Hugo Quintana, but Quintana's now injured. This time it was Marcos Gomez, and Gomez had a really good game, but alongside Ortiz always, I think he's like such a key player. So I think him and Delis Gonzalez staying fit, that's going to be the big key for Olimpia to go deep in this tournament.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very much a crucial next few weeks for a lot of these teams in the Clausura as everything gets heated up. But of course, let's switch gears. Obviously, still keeping on to actually some of the Clausura players, because honestly, that's all what we're going to see for the Paraguay national team as their call-ups have been announced this week for Guillermo Barros Schelotto. They are currently undergoing a microcycle, which is basically players training at Upane at Radiroga, the main training center for the Paraguay national team, and names as follow. There are 24 players that are currently on this Paraguay team. I'll read them out loud. Santiago Rojas of Nacional for the goalkeepers, Alfredo Aguilar of Olimpia, Rodrigo Morigo of Libertad, and Angel Gonzalez of Libertad. The defenders are Ivan Pilis of Libertad, Alberto Espinola of Cerro Porteño, Luis Zárate of Olimpia, Saúl Salcedo of Olimpia, Mateo Gamarra of Olimpia, Alexis Duarte of Cerro, Ivan Torres of Olimpia, and Alan Rodriguez of Cerro. The midfielders are as follows: Angel Picalucena of Cerro, Marcos Gomez of Olimpia, Diego Gomez of Libertad, Richard Ortiz of Olimpia, Fernando Cardoso of Olimpia, Gustavo Caballero of Nacional, Matias Segovia Guarani, and Fernando Ovelar of Cerro Porteño. And the four forwards: Lorenzo Melgarejo of Libertad, Romeo Benitez of Guarani, Delis Gonzalez of Olimpia, and Brian Zamudio to round up the 24 players who make up the Paraguay national team for these games. Ralph, I'll go to you on this one first, because I think we see, obviously, with this weird kind of World Cup situation and schedule happening in November, we don't see any of the players that are being played outside of Paraguay. It's certainly in South America and certainly in Europe as well. So this is a good opportunity for a lot of these Paraguayan players to show if they want to be part of this national team squad for the future, because my initial thoughts are it's a squad that is relatively mixed with experience and youth as well. But there are some gems out there that, obviously the game against Mexico will definitely get some attention from scouts from all across the world, certainly in MLS and North America. So yeah, this is a good opportunity for a lot of these players to make a name for themselves and then see if they can get some interest from bigger clubs.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of a mixed squad because there's some players in there that we know all about them, right? Like, I don't know, Lorenzo Melgarejo and Richard Ortiz and Pica Lucena, that kind of thing. But then there's some exciting players that we haven't really seen at all outside of Paraguay. So Diego Gomez at Libertad, he's burst through. He's doing really well, holding off some pretty strong players to be in the first team. And so he gets a chance. I'm just trying to think. I don't think he played very much Libertadores this year. So this is really one of his bigger stages that he gets to play on. And then the kids from Guarani, so Mati Segovia was captain of the under-20s recently, so now the under-20s national team, so he gets that move up. And then Romeo Benitez is somebody that's very talented, very flashy, so they're always good fun to watch. But we'll see if he gets a chance. If he gets thrown in, this might be maybe a step too far for him. He might just be training with the team. But I think that those three are the ones I'm kind of interested in. And then the best from this list, the best player that's yet to have gone abroad, because of course Derlis and Lorenzo Melgarejo have played abroad, I think is Alexis Duarte, and now this is like his big chance to be put on the big stage and for somebody to finally take a chance on him, because I think he's shown that he's good enough to take the next step. He obviously struggled like all of Cerro did against Palmeiras, but Palmeiras are a very strong side, even by European standards, I would argue. So I think for Alexis Duarte, like this is a good chance to get that showcase that he's looking for. But yeah, it'll be an interesting squad. Let's also see how they're put together in terms of formation, if we see any differences, or Barros Schelotto kind of goes with what his base has been so far and just he's mixing up the players.
Yeah, I don't think you need the best team in the world to beat the Mexican league players, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I totally get that the Mexican league is huge. They have good players, but I don't think you really need your best players to beat, but they're going to try to mix it up, because I believe Mexico is also going to play with the mix of local players. So it would be a good test for our players, especially for those new ones that are coming in, the new young blood mixed in with the experienced players. I do think we're going to see like half and half in the formation, just hearing Schelotto and pretty much seeing what he's putting on the list. I mean, some of these players were even on that game against Japan, where we kind of played pretty well, against Korea also. And so we might see some of those players coming back. I do think some players were tested on those last games in Asia, and they pretty much made the cut. That's why they're again on the list. That's why Schelotto wants to have them close again. And in other names, it's their first time. Just as Ralph was saying, these are some players that are on that process of becoming national team players that have been on the under 17, under 20, and they've done pretty well. And Schelotto has seen them lately because he's been doing that work also with Bobadilla, the coach of the under 20. And now it's that time, right, to bring them into the team, to have their opportunity, because they're over the age already. I mean, Romeo Benitez is 19, but he's going to be 20 this year. Segovia is getting game time like never in Guarani, so it is their chance now to put that national team jersey on. We're not going to the World Cup at the end of the year, so we need to see young players. So I hope they get game time. I hope they don't just go to the United States or to Atlanta to the shoppings. I know there's good shoppings in Atlanta. I know the stadium is beautiful. I know they're going to take a lot of pictures in that beautiful stadium, but I hope they take this experience very seriously. I know players that are going to be happy to be back, as we said before. Derlis Gonzalez, he had trouble with Berizzo, just as Lorenzo Melgarejo did, and they're back in the squad. These are guys that could make the difference. I mean, Derlis Gonzalez has been to Europe. He's back here. He played in Brazil. He knows what it's about playing with the national team. He's had big games. He's been there in big moments also, and I think he wants to play the World Cup. He wants to take that mission also, to be one of the captains, one of the leaders in that locker room. And I'm loving that we're getting him on this ship, that we're getting him on board, and he's going to probably take us to good places. And Lorenzo Melgarejo also, I was just looking at his age. Lorenzo's only 32, Roberto. He still has some good years ahead of him to give us in this process that we need to get to the World Cup. And hopefully we get a couple of surprises. I mean, out of all these names, the one name that stands out in my eyes is Gustavo Caballero, 20 years old. He started the year out in Ameliano. Now he's playing in Nacional. And what a breakthrough year for him. Also for Mateo Gamarra. This is a guy that was playing in the second division not too long ago for Independiente. Now playing for Olimpia. He had a couple of bad games, but now he had a huge Superclasico. And now he's in the national team. So for some of these guys, it's also the dream coming true of going to the national team. Hopefully they could take advantage of that.
Absolutely. It's always an honor, and it's not something that many Paraguayan players have the opportunity to play for their national team. Let's be real. Yes, obviously the Paraguay team has fallen on bad times as of recent, but playing on the national team is playing on the national team. It's the biggest honor that you can have as a player. So for a lot of these guys, this is the best opportunity that they can get to achieve that. So I'm definitely excited to see what they'll be able to demonstrate against Mexico in a couple of weeks, as obviously the two guys here at Guarani Vision will actually be at the game. So obviously for those that are listening, me and Ralph obviously will be at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta watching the Paraguay-Mexico game. So obviously hit us up on Twitter at Roberto Rojas 97, at Ralph's at Paraguay Ralph. Hit us up. You want to meet up? We could talk Paraguayan soccer, go for a beer, whatever you want. Hopefully there should be some masalas actually there, Ralph. Obviously a good tailgate is great. So yeah, for anyone that wants to hit us up, make sure to send us on DMs at Guarani Vision or to our personal ones. Definitely check us out, as we definitely want to get a huge contingent of Paraguayans, where there's not a lot of us here, but hey, let's make it a nice time.
Yeah, we're going to be outnumbered by the Mexicans, that's for sure. But let's try and bring your Albi Rojas out to Atlanta, and we'll have a little group of us to cheer on the side, because it's going to be fun. I mean, for a lot of people, is a rare chance, those of us that are over here, that you get to see Paraguay playing in your part of the US, because for those that don't live in the US, it's such a big country. It doesn't mean every time Paraguay play here, we can go and watch them. We were talking about the Paraguay-Mexico game that was in Seattle, for example. Well, me being in Miami, to get to Seattle, it's easier to get to Asuncion. So it's good that we have something down over on the east for those of us that want to go and watch them. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. I cannot wait. And obviously this is a perfect way to end our show. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.